Let's talk about camera gear today and whether gear actually does matter. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Pin here. I was at the office the other day, one of the few times I go in, and we were talking about whether camera gear matters because one of my colleagues was considering buying a camera for their daughter. And it started a whole discussion as to what gear is necessary when you want to do photography. And the question became, does gear actually matter? To which I immediately answered with yes, it does, but to an extent. I've actually got my phone next to me to make sure that I stay on topic because, as we all know, I can ramble on in 50 million directions and you guys will be sitting here for an hour, which I'm sure you don't want to do. See, I've just started. So I'll do my best to stay on topic. I'll do my best to keep to the points I want to keep to and make it as succinct as possible, but also as logical and justified as possible as well, because as a photographer, I can't come out and say, yes, gear matters, but not tell you why. But I also can't come out and say, no, it doesn't matter, and not tell you why as well. So to start at the beginning, there is that old phrase that the best camera is the one you've got with you, which is true to an extent. Yes, the best camera is the one you have with you, but at the same time, it's not the best camera you've got. A prime example is the best camera I'll almost always have with me is what's on my phone. This is Samsung's S21, but the best camera I've got is my EOS R. Now, granted, walking around with this every day is not as easy as walking around with my phone or the Sony that I'm filming on right now. But at the same time, there's not really that much stopping me from bringing the Canon with me, at least most days that I head out. Right, which actually most days that I head out, I might actually bring the Sony with me just because it's nice and compact. Is the best camera the one that you've got with you? Yes, to an extent, because it depends on what your best camera actually is and how cumbersome it is to bring with you all the time as well. I'm fortunate that I can actually fit this into an insert that fits into my shoulder bag. It does take up a bit of space when it's in there, but I can still carry it with me quite comfortably most days as well. In that respect, I could bring it with me. I could also always bring the Sony with me, but I've almost always got the phone with me. So yes, the best camera is the one we've got with you, but only as far as going, how hard is it to bring your best camera with you all the time? Which ties in nicely to my next point, which is camera sensor size. All right, so I've got you could say I've got four cameras in front of me. One is the Sony that I'm filming on right now. I've got the camera on my smartphone right here. I've got the full frame sensor on my Canon, but then I've also got the tiny 1-inch sensor on this GoPro. Sensor size is mostly important depending on what it is you want to do with your photos. If your end goal is purely to take a picture and share it on social media and pretty much nowhere else, or just save it on your phone, I should say, then sensor size is less important compared to someone who wants to print large photos. I've started printing photos when I had my old Nikon D5600, which is a great DSLR, great camera if you want to find out if you actually want to make photography a serious thing or not, because it's not overly expensive and it gives you practically all the features you could potentially need. But if I wanted to print a 30 by 20 picture out from one of those pictures, they're not as sharp as what I would get out of my Canon's full frame sensor. And it's not just the lens, it is predominantly the sensor. Because when you look at a crop sensor versus a full frame sensor, I'll put an image up to try and make more sense out of it. A crop sensor is smaller than a full frame sensor. And say if you take a 24 megapixel crop sensor and a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, whilst the number of pixels on both sensors will be exactly the same, because the full frame sensor is larger, each individual pixel will be larger as well, which means you'll get much more clarity, much better color, much better dynamic range, and much better low light performance as well. Sensor size does matter because also if I wanted to print large photos, I would not take a picture I've used on this phone and printed it out to a 30 by 20 because whilst maybe from 10 meters away it might look okay, if you wanted to get it closer to 2 feet away, probably won't look the best. Whereas pictures I have taken on the Canon and blown up to that size, right up front, almost, pixel peeping it, and on a printout, it was still tack sharp. So whether you're 10 feet away or 1 foot away, it was crystal clear, and that's why I have no issues printing it at that size because I know the images will come out tack sharp as well. So does sensor size matter? Yes, absolutely, depending on what it is you're trying to do. Gear also matters because whether you're a photographer, a carpenter, an electrician, a plumber, whatever the case, you have to choose the right tool for the job that you want to do. Because if you haven't got the right tool for the job, it'll be a lot harder to try to do the job properly. Because I like to shoot landscape photography and I like to print my images out large, that is why I've got a full frame camera with my Canon EOS R. Would I like to upgrade it to a medium format one day? Definitely. But at the same time, I've been able to print out images 30 by 20 inches with this camera and they're still coming out tack sharp. So I actually have no reason to upgrade it. Granted, I know saying that nowadays there is software that does allow you to enlarge your photos, but I would rather try and do that less and get more out of the camera than and just get the best camera I can at the time to take the best picture I can, and that way I have to rely less on AI, something like Gigapixel or Adobe's enlargement tool, whatever it's called, Super Enlarger I think it is, to make pictures larger and sharper than they could be if I didn't have a full frame camera. So yes, gear does matter depending on what it is you're doing with the pictures you want to take. Because as I said, I would not take a picture I've taken on this phone and print it out large, maybe A4 at best, and after that I would just leave it because it would just be a waste of paper and ink at that point. So where else does gear matter besides just pixels and sensor size? But it's like I mentioned earlier that you have to choose the right tool for the job. You will not find an action, sports, or wildlife photographer with my Canon EOS R unless that is all they could get. And that's purely because of the frame rate. This shoots at, I think it's like 8 to 10 frames per second. Whereas if they were to get something like the 1DX Mark III or the Sony's A1 or their A7R4 that can shoot 15 to 20 frames per second, that's what they're going to get because that's what gives them the best chance of getting the image they want without having to worry about missing any shots. Because also, this camera's got one card slot, which is an SD card. Those cameras can accommodate SD cards. The 1DX Mark III can accommodate a CF Express card, which is a lot faster, and from what I've seen, to run the buffer out on that is not very easy to do. So that's where they use those cameras, is because they want to make sure that they get all the pictures they want without having to worry about missing it and without having to wait for the buffer to clear so that they can go and take more pictures. I tried doing high-speed shots with this camera once just for a bit of fun. After about 20 or 30 pictures, the buffer filled up and then I literally had to wait 2 minutes for it to clear. If you're doing action and wildlife, that's time you don't have to spend. You need every second available and you need your camera with you every second available as well. Yes, gear does matter because wedding photographers would also not use this camera, or at least not too many of them would, because it's only got that one SD card. And when you're shooting an important event such as someone's wedding, which hopefully only happens once in their life, you want to make sure that you've done whatever you can to prevent any loss of the images. Granted, SD cards will fail from time to time. That's just part of life. It sucks, it's shit, but that's reality. But at least with other cameras, you have dual SD card and you can write to both at the same time. On this camera, you can't because there's literally just one card. There are a few other reasons where gear does matter, such as weather sealing. Like this camera, my Canon I should say, is weather sealed. I still try and protect it and not let it get rained on or especially drenched by salt water. If your camera gets covered in salt water, clean it up straight away. Just do it. Don't let the salt water dry up too quickly or too much or get into the creaks and crevices, or you'll be saying goodbye to your camera. But I still try to protect it where possible. But not just weather sealing, stabilization matters too. If I was doing lots of street, I would want a camera body that has in-body image stabilization, or IBIS, which neither of my cameras have. None of my cameras have. The only one that does is either the GoPro or my phone. But I know that if I had a body with stabilization, I should be able to get better pictures. But if we took stabilization out, the lens wouldn't be able to give me as great pictures as if I had a faster lens like an f2.8 or 1.8, 1.4, 1.2, whatever the case may be, compared to my f4. I'll go with my last topic now because I know I have rambled on quite a bit, and if you have stayed with me so far, I do appreciate it. And if you have liked this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated because it does help out a lot as well. But the last topic I'll cover is not the camera itself per se, but the accessories you can get for the camera. And the prime example I'm going to use is tripods. This was a cheap $30 tripod I got on Amazon purely to hold the Sony camera when I'm doing my videos at home. Would I take this out to do landscape photography with me? No. Simply, just no. And that's purely because if you take a look at it, I'll extend it for you. That's how tall it is. I'm still taller than it, and I'm sitting down and it's sitting on my desk. Even if I wanted to get low, I probably wouldn't, because there's still the center column in the way. So that's not a tripod. That's not a tripod I would ever actually take out. That's why it's purely for being used at home. The tripod I do take out is this one. This is a 3-legged thing, Travis, with their ball head. I don't remember which ball head it is, but I've been using this tripod for 8 months now, and I've got to say it's brilliant. So that's where gear matters outside just the camera, because you've got the camera, you've got the lens. Yes, those do matter. The sensor size matters, the quality of the lens matters, but the other equipment you use to take your photos matters as well. That's why I've even got this bronze orange, sorry, 3-legged things. I know I'm not going to get the color right. L bracket on my camera, so that way I've got the best chance possible of doing a panorama, provided I've set up my tripod properly. Which without the L bracket, I could do it. It just won't look as good. So does gear matter? Yes. Anyone who says it doesn't matter, there is some truth to that. But I think if you have the right tools for the job you want to do, you will get a much better result, and most importantly, you will do it much more efficiently as well, and much more productively. I would much rather spend, as much as I like going out to take photos, I'd rather come back with 5 bangers because I've got the right tools for the job, than spend the same amount of time and hopefully get one because I don't have the right tool for the job, or I've got to spend so much more time in post trying to get that same effect. When I'd rather not do that. I'd rather come back with 4 or 5 images. Like when I went out to Turrametta Beach, I came back with 3 images I really liked, and I was able to do that because I had the right gear with me. I had my camera, I had my filters, I had the right tripod. And if I didn't have that, I don't know if I could have replicated it with just a phone or my Sony, where I have nothing for the Sony except the cage it's sitting on, so it can sit on a tripod. I hope everything I've said today makes sense. And if you do have a different opinion, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what your opinion is on anything I've mentioned today, and whether I'm right or wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say I'm wrong. And if you want to make sure that you stay up to date with future videos that are coming up as well, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And make sure you've got that little bell tick, so that way you know whenever a new video comes out. But I'll leave it there for now. I hope you guys can all take something away from this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a good night.